Hey there, internets. So, bad news if I didn't, I think I may have mentioned it last week, but the state of Washington is going to be stuck with SB 5599 because they couldn't get enough votes. And we're only talking, I guess it was 7,000 or 8,000 votes short for being able to make that a referendum. And a friend of mine, just, who happens to be in Snohomish County and was involved with this, she sent me an email where she said, "Hello all, it's with a heavy heart and deep disappointment and great sadness I must report that we did not get enough signatures for the referendum. I have two numbers. We were either 7,000 or 8,000 short. I have cried and prayed and questioned. I want to thank you all for your effort and for standing up for the children, and thank you for standing up for what's good and righteous. We can't stop. We must not weary in doing well. I don't know what the next step is. I need to go cry some more yet." Well, she's had a week. I have questions. I happen to also see people really promoting Dave Reichert for governor, saying Semi Bird and whoever the other guy is, and I can't remember his name, have no chance. Just pick Dave Reichert. I'm not willing to do that. I can tell you this much, though. And what I said back to her was something to the effect of, we do not flee, we do not quit, we keep fighting. If we flee, if we quit, that's surrender. And yes, every one of us can probably say, what could I have done better? Could I have gotten a couple more signatures? And if enough people did that, that would have made the difference. I'm not going to go there because people did what they could individually. You can't beat yourself up over it. In prepping for tonight's video, I did happen to read Washington State's Constitution, and I think some of the issues they had with getting the initiatives printed and getting it together and the referendum petitions printed and getting it ready to go may have impacted that. However, that does not mean we have to stop fighting. I was on Facebook in this thread where people were arguing back and forth of whether just go with Dave Reichert or not. I'm not willing to go there because I'm not willing to just go with what is effectively a rhino. Not that Dave Reichert is necessarily that, but he didn't work to get rid of the ACA, and that tells me that Dave Reichert is an actor. I hate to say that, but I really feel he is. If he had been if he wasn't an actor, he would have voted to repeal Obamacare. For years, when people were fighting against Obamacare and it wasn't popular, and they said, we will repeal it. And then when Trump got elected and they actually could repeal it, and a bunch of people who had voted for the same bill before, voted no. That told me they were actors and they were full of it. That said, though, they're in the conversation. Carrie Condata, who is a former state representative and running something called RestoreWashington.org, they've been trying to do some things. Last year, they tried to do a bunch of initiative petitions. They tried to do 12 different petitions or so, and I really feel like it was too many. They got down to 6, and they're actually much better written. And one of them is I-201, 2081, which I have on my desk here, partially filled out. And that is on their list. But they have some others. And I want to talk about them because this is an opportunity to fight and actually move forward. Now, I said, one thing I have long said is, I remember clear back when I first got to vote. It was 1996. That was coming off of the 1994, as they called it, Republican Revolution, where Republicans came out with the contract with America. Of course, Democrats tried to call it the contract on America, which was very unfair and false. And they decided that they needed to, something else I'm going to mention, and they put forth 13 items that they said they would bring to a floor vote. And they did bring them to a floor vote. Didn't mean they passed them all, but they followed through with their word. And that, to me, is one of the biggest things that people are not understanding about politics right now. That when politicians say they'll do something, actually doing it. This is why people like Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders have risen in prominence. For years, you sit there voting for people thinking, oh, I voted in Bush. We finally get to cut the budget. And the domestic spending just went up. TARP. I was done with personalities. This is why all these people go, oh yeah, you gotta go Trump, gotta go Trump. I'm like, no, I've done the personality thing before. I was betrayed when Bush pushed TARP. This was, of course, before Mitch McConnell went and became his political life lived long enough to become the villain. And I was done with it, with Bush after that. So I'm going to stay true to principles. And that's one thing the initiatives are. Now, some of these initiatives I think are just a Band-Aid solution. But with regards to doing something like the contract with America, you have to have a plan. In 2022, they did not have a plan of what they would do if they came into office. Mitch McConnell criticized Rick Scott for saying, this is what we will do. And you had all this stuff that was going on, people doing piecemeal stuff, and that's where I think the abortion issue hurt. Not because Republicans being basically pro-life, but because some of them ran up the score. Lindsey Graham's bill to do a national abortion ban, that was the wrong moment to be introducing something like that. Some of the initiatives and attempts at constitutional amendments to ban abortion in some states, wrong move in that moment. I want to see abortion banned, but that was not the right moment, and some of them were terrible leaders. So these initiatives are Band-Aids, and as we go here, I'm going to make some suggestions. I think that for a contract with Washington, Republicans should say, we're going to take a few of the things that have been popular at the ballot box and try and make them permanent. Democrats, every time we voted in 2/3 majority vote to raise taxes, what did Democrats do? They overturned it a few years later if they couldn't throw it out in the courts. We should be saying, we will bring to a floor vote in Olympia 2/3 majority to raise taxes. Why? Because they will vote it down. We might not get the 2/3 majority that we need to send it to the voters, but you're going to put Democrats on record of where they stand. And then you can pin it on them and say, because we need to do like Florida has done and build a party. Start doing things positively that can build a party until it becomes a solid red state. Don't think that Washington cannot become something different than it is. It also means not just running away. But that's another issue. But the first one was the one everyone wanted to sign when I was at the initiatives. It's probably the longest one other than 2081 in text. I read them all tonight, except for the one I'd already read. It's I-2113. Reasonable police pursuit, and it basically restores the ability of police to chase down criminals. This was the one when I was at the fair booth last year. People were coming over to sign that and saying goodbye. A lot of them didn't even want to look at the other initiatives. That's the first one at the top of the page. The links in the description below in order tonight will be reasonable police pursuit, a piece from the Tax Foundation I'll be talking about, and then a copy of the Washington State Constitution. Go to as a PDF, go to page 61, where it talks about taxation. The next initiative says no state income tax. Now this is where it's a Band-Aid. And this is where this other link is important. It prohibits the state, county, cities, and other local jurisdictions from imposing, collecting income taxes as defined as having the same meaning as gross income in the Internal Revenue Code. Because in the Tax Foundation article, it says from March 29, 2013, Washington Supreme Court affirms capital gains tax and invites challenge to broader income tax restrictions. You gotta remember, we elect these people in Washington to be our Supreme Court justices, and most of them are liberal Democrats. It might even be all of them at this point. And about a few paragraphs in it reads, Washington's Constitution never mentions income taxes in so many words, but contains a uniformity clause that puts strict limits on property taxes, while, under a voter-approved amendment adopted in 1930, defining property extremely broadly to include everything, whether tangible or intangible, subject to ownership. Nearly a century of case law has held that this definition encompasses income and thus functionally prohibits the state from adopting an income tax. And understand, if they did, under this provision, it has to be a flat rate income tax if they did push it through. In 1933, after voters adopted an income tax by ballot measure, the state Supreme Court struck it down in a violation of the clause, with the majority considering the logic self-evident and unassailable. It would certainly this is what it reads from this decision. It would certainly defy the ingenuity of the most profound lexicographer to formulate a more comprehensive definition of property. It is everything, whether tangible or intangible, subject to ownership. Income is either property under our 14th Amendment, or no one owns it. There being no other classifications in our Constitution but real and personal property and intangible property. Incomes necessarily fall within the category of intangible property. It needs no technical construction to tell what those words mean. The overwhelming weight of the judicial authority is that income is property, and tax upon income is a tax upon property. Understand, that ballot measure was also for a progressive income tax. All you need is to find a court willing to say, oh no, as long as it's a uniform number, you can have a property tax. You gotta remember, the Democrats don't believe in actual definitions to words. They don't believe in objective reality. Okay, and they get so offended by the idea. I got kicked out of a Star Trek group on Facebook because I said I really believe in objective reality, not subjective reality, and I'm gone. Okay, so it's a Band-Aid solution. This is the other one that we put in a contract with Washington. We put in that we will bring an outright ban on a state income tax to a floor vote as a constitutional amendment. The Democrats vote against it, then guess what happens? They have to sit there and defend why they wanted a state income tax when they couldn't even get it passed as an initiative several years ago. In Skagit County, almost every county or every precinct in the county voted against it except the one with the huge graveyard. Very liberal precincts voted against the state income tax, and it went down badly. This is the kind of thing that could pass, and it gives people something to vote for when they vote for Republicans, and gives somebody who are persuadable on the other side something to vote for. So any kind of thing, we're on borrowed time as far as court cases striking down a state income tax, and an initiative is a Band-Aid. It's still a worthy Band-Aid, but it is a Band-Aid. The next one is I-2109, repeal the capital gains tax. This needs no explanation. It's already after the voters said with a 60% majority, well, you shouldn't keep this tax, the legislature ignored them because those votes were not binding. That's the next one. Very good idea. Repeal that tax. Next one is, of course, 2181, parental notification. This is the Parental Rights Initiative, so they have a right to know if they're doing any medical care for your child, what materials are being offered in the schools, school calendars, those sorts of things. And then the next one down is Initiative 2117, Stop the Hidden Gas Tax. This basically repeals the cap and trade tax. Now, you remember last week's video where I showed you, if you watch the video, and I will try and figure out how to get a link in the end of this video. Remember when I showed that it's not corporate greed that's leading to higher gas prices in Washington, but it is that gas tax or that carbon tax. This repeals it. This repeals what voters had shot down in previous years, and the Democrats passed under an emergency clause. And the last one was an opt-out of the state long-term care program. Primarily allows it for all employees and self-employed people must elect to keep that coverage, and that's 2124. It's a little bit longer than some. Some are very, very short bills, but all of these are good initiatives. A couple of them are just band-aid solutions, but we do need to amend the Constitution, and putting it in the Constitution for a 2/3 majority vote to raise taxes or a vote of the people is exactly the kind of thing that we need to have, and say all of the people we vote, if you send down to Olympia, will vote for this. Maybe we don't get it in, but we can at least make the Democrats, we file it anyway, we make the Democrats vote it down or refuse to give it a committee hearing, but we show that we have something that's positive that we can do. Two things that are popular too. 2/3 majority vote to raise taxes has passed numerous times. An outright ban on a state income tax, you're going to win it. If it's a winning issue, why turn away from that? And then you can throw some other things in of a lesser, like voter ID and a few other things. School vouchers would be great, but I highly encourage you to read more of the state constitution. It is a very long document. It's 276 pages, but there is a provision in their equivalent of the freedom of religion spot in there that says you can't use public money for instruction. That may require a later, because people support vouchers too. That may require a later amendment. But do that and start building a party. That means, this is the other thing I had to pull out from my desk, register people to vote. I've got a couple of neighbors I'm trying to get registered. So they couldn't sign the initiative or referendum. We didn't get them registered in time because there's some issues. Get people registered. If you have a young person in your household, get them registered. You got to remember, Democrats will say, we'll get their kids registered and vote by mail. Just fill that out. Just take 2 minutes to fill that. Just they'll tell them, their kids, just check the D. Just tell them to check the R. I had a friend living with me for a while. She'd never voted before. She sat down after for the first time she voted, and I think it was either 2016 or 2017. I think 2016 she didn't ask me how to vote, but 2018 she sat down in my kitchen and said, "Okay, Pat, how do I fill this out?" Now, I did the ethical thing and explained why I was voting certain ways. And she went right down the line, though, when it came to the candidates, and when I advised voting for just checking the R effectively, she voted for the Republican each time. And she is not your typical Republican voter. She did vote differently than me on one thing, and I think it was related to public transportation, if I recall. But otherwise, that's the effect of you registering people to vote. If you know they're conservative or if they're in your household, get them registered. That's the kind of thing we need to do to build a party. These initiatives are something we need to do to build a party. I'm going to be double checking with the party chair for the fair booth if we're going to make sure we have these. If not, I'm going to get them ordered. But regardless of that, when you see them, sign them. When you got a chance to go to a meeting, getting involved, we have to do it. And until you have that next opportunity, like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. Helps me out, helps get the word out. And until then, you all take care.